প্রিয় দর্শক, আপনাদের প্রত্যেককে স্বাগত জানাই বিশেষ সাক্ষাৎকার অনুষ্ঠানে। আজ আমরা কথা বলবো মডেল ইনভেস্টর, yoga practitioner, yoga writer, contributing writer, anti-smoking activist, maternity health activist এবং আমেরিকার জনপ্রিয় মডেল ক্রিস্টি টার্লিংটনের সঙ্গে। যেহেতু ক্রিস্টির ভাষা ইংরেজি, তাই আমরা সাক্ষাৎকারের পুরোটাই তার সাথে ইংরেজিতে কথা বলবো। Christy, welcome to Boishakhi Television, and thanks in advance for sharing your auspicious, gracious moment with Boishakhi TV.
Thank you.
As you know, Chrysty Turlington Burns, born in January 2nd, 1969, and you were from Walnut Creek, California. You're the middle of three daughters born to Dwayne Turlington, who was a pilot for Pan American World Airways, Maria Elizabeth, who is your mother, and you have a versatile career, starting as a model and right now ambassador of care and also a voice for maternity health. So what is the untold story behind?
I don't know how much is untold. I've been working as a model for almost 30 years, and in that time have done many things. I've started a couple of businesses, written a book on yoga, contributed, as you said, to some publications as well as some television journalism. And most recently, and the purpose of my visit here to Bangladesh is I made a documentary film about maternal health around the world called No Woman, No Cry. In my advocacy work, I've always shared personal stories, and the reason that I became aware of maternal health statistics was because of my own personal experience when I delivered my first child. There's a lot of years to explain here, but I'm happy to explain any part of it if you like.
You're a woman, particularly a mother, as you said. You have a bitter, terrible experience about maternity health that led you to voice Safe Maternity slogan to create awareness. Do you think the social movement you're running on, and you will touch the apex to strengthen this movement?
Well, I think this is an issue that is very, very big and very complicated, but it's one that I think touches all people. It's a universal issue, being pregnant and having children. I think what I can contribute is lending my personal experience and the communications and the experiences I have from traveling around the world and speaking with other women and other mothers. There are many stories to be told, and anyone who can contribute in sharing those stories, I think, can make a contribution, but it could never take one person alone or one type of person. It really takes all of us.
In 2008, you began working on a documentary film, No Women, No Cry, profiling the status of maternal health worldwide. So the film you directed tells the stories of at-risk pregnant women in 4 parts of the world, including the remote Maasai tribe in Tanzania, a slum of Bangladesh, a post-abortion care ward in Guatemala, and a prenatal clinic in the United States. So, in compare with the Maasai tribe in Tanzania, what do you find in Bangladesh part?
Well, we tried in making a film about the global state of maternal health was to identify barriers that prevent women from accessing the care that is rightfully theirs. So in Tanzania, we sort of examined the barriers, which are human resource shortages, as well as the fact that so many women live in rural communities, which is also the case here. However, we focused, instead of the distance, where transport was a big barrier to care in Tanzania. Here in Bangladesh, we were focused in Dhaka, in the slums, and distance was not so much the problem, but we looked at some of the social and cultural barriers which prevent women from seeking care on time, in a timely manner, which might prevent their complications. So they're very different looks at the same kinds of problems, and you find in each of the countries actually that there are as many commonalities in what might prevent them from seeking care or getting the care that they need as there are differences. So in showing 4 countries, you really get to see that, that compare and contrast, but that there is oftentimes, you know, whether it be the way that women are treated and the inequities and disparities in care in each country, in every country of the world, there are some forms of disparities and inequities. But we really, those are the things that I think shine the most when you look at the film, is that those are some of the greatest barriers to care.
You have tried to show 4 different samples from different parts of the world. So how Bangladesh part differs from other 3 parts in your documentary film?
Well, what we looked at, because the statistics about Bangladesh had indicated that almost 90% of women were giving birth at home or outside of a facility, and oftentimes without a trained, skilled birth attendant at her side. And so that was one of the areas where it was unique to some of the other countries. However, we also examined why women make some of those choices and how limited their options may be that prevent them from seeking care. The quality of the care that they have access to is oftentimes not to par. The treatment of them when they reach a facility is oftentimes not to par, and it's interesting to examine what that is and why women are making choices or not making choices.
I see. So can you share me your experience you have achieved from Bangladesh?
Well, we focused on a program in Corral through BRAC called the Manoshi project, and it's an amazing program, one that even in the last 2.5 years since returning has already evolved and changed to continue to be better and improve. It specifically has addressed that issue that I mentioned about women preferring to deliver and without skilled personnel at their side at home. It's created clean birth huts in the community so that they're close by, so that they're as close to where they would feel most comfortable to deliver, but they're clean. And there is a skilled person there to help a woman out. Since the time that I was here, they have improved the training, and there's more midwifery skills that are at practice in that facility. As well, there are pilot programs that are improving the technology and the ability to use cellular technology to record data, to help with them, assist them to make more efficient examinations of the patients in their homes. So it's wonderful to be able to see change in such a short period of time and improvements on an already very, very strong program.
Additionally, do you have any suggestions what can be useful for both of us, the government and the women and the common people, the maternity health service concerning?
Well, we've been to some communities where you can see that there are so many women that when they do reach a clinic or a hospital setting, that there's no space for them. There are not enough human resources there. There's not 24-hour coverage. So those are things that are vital in addressing health concerns. I mean, particularly with pregnancy, babies come oftentimes in the middle of the night and inconvenient hours of the day, and so you need 24/7 care. And transport. In almost every country, there's a real issue with transport, and making sure that there's linkages between the community and a clinic or a facility that can provide emergency obstetric care.
Every 90 seconds, a woman dies. You have shown this information through your website, personal website. So what is the rate in Bangladesh? Have you gone through such research or survey?
I haven't ever seen any breakdown per country how that would change. The 90 seconds it's recent data actually in the last year that has actually changed it from a woman dying every minute to a woman dying every 90 seconds. So I don't know that anybody's actually broken down country by country what that is.
You have your video, what should I say, vast career starting from modeling to business, yoga practitioner, yoga writer. Okay, so you have written a book, Yoga Can Change Your Life. So what about yoga?
It's called living yoga, creating a life practice, and I mean, it's a discipline and a practice that has a set of tools really that I think can be very useful in daily life. It's incredibly popular in the United States and in the West at the moment, and has been for some time. And I discovered yoga as a teenager, and it's been incredibly helpful for me through all the different aspects of my life. From the physical exercise part of it to the meditation skills, which I think are also very important, as well as a tenet of yoga, which is service. And that's the way that I sort of view my advocacy work, that it's service. So, I mean, I can't imagine my life without it. It's taught me a tremendous amount, and it's put perspective on just my place in the world. So.
You were a smoker once upon a time, but right now you're anti-smoking campaigner.
Yes, I was a smoker in my teens and early 20s, and I became an advocate after losing my father to lung cancer. So that was my first experience working in public health. My dad died in 1997. So I started to advocate and speak to young girls about smoking and trying to advocate for prevention and cessation of tobacco. There had been a recent study at the time that I started advocating around women in particular and tobacco and smoking risks. And it shocked me that it had taken so long to do such studies on women, because we tend to be more vulnerable because of our reproductive systems to many things, but tobacco and lung and heart disease in particular. So it sort of opened a door into women's health that I have obviously continued with.
Your mother was a humanitarian supporter. She was working with CARE so far, and right now you are CARE's ambassador. So what's your experience in working with humanitarian agency?
Well, I've done a lot of different volunteer work over many years, and I became very informed about the issue of maternal health through CARE. But I'm not really officially an ambassador. I'm an advocate. I've enjoyed partnering with CARE, and as I said, I learned so much about the issue through my travels with them and the work that they do in, I think, over 90 countries. But I've also started my own organization, which is also an advocacy organization, which is called Every Mother Counts. And that is really an action and mobilization campaign to help to fill some of the gaps that some of the larger organizations have not been able to fill, and in a way to get people to engage the public, the general public, because the conversation around maternal and newborn child health has not been, it's been at more of a policy and decision maker level, and not really a grassroots movement in the West. So I'm trying to engage people.
Let me digress here. You starred in your fashion documentary Catwalk and Isaac Mizrahi's Unshipped, right? So you were added on as the fourth model investor after so far, Elle Macpherson, Naomi Campbell, and Claudia Schiffer of the now defunct fashion cafes. So how you find yourself being a model entrepreneur?
I wasn't an investor actually in the fashion cafe. I joined them at the end before the business went out of business. It was a very brief stint, and it was an interesting experience. I think that's the only sort of model entrepreneurial experience that I had.
You have two children with your husband. How are they?
They're very well. My daughter is 7.5, and as I said before, she's the reason that I became aware of also the issues of maternal health, because I had a complication when I had her, and a son who's 5, and they are home with their father. It was Father's Day in America yesterday, so they're enjoying their father on Father's Day. I'll be home in a few days.
You are studying public health, and before that I know you have that intention to know in depth the religion, and so far you are a Roman Catholic fellow, right?
Well, I went to get my undergraduate degree at New York University about 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and I focused my degree on comparative religion and Eastern philosophy.
I see.
And then I a few years ago went back to when I was engaged in this work on maternal health. I wanted to further my knowledge, and so I went back to school to get my master's in public health at Columbia University. And they've tied in very well. It's important to understand culture and religion when you're addressing reproductive health in most countries in the world, so I found both degrees are very complementary.
I have a point to know here, as I mentioned here, as of 2008, you have been making brief visit to Africa on behalf of Product Raid, and to Latin America on behalf of Care Relief Agency. So your involvement with CARE was influenced by your mother. So as you are visiting many different parts of Bangladesh, and this is the first time perhaps you are in Bangladesh, and the documentary you are going to make premiere here in Bangladesh. So you have, various dimensional experience still. So what is the experience you have to share for the Bangladeshi people commonly?
Well, I've actually spent my entire career traveling the world, and because my mother is from El Salvador, I spent a lot of time growing up going to Central America, which is a fairly impoverished country. The work that I started doing with CARE was in 2005, right. And I've traveled mostly to Latin America and Africa with CARE. But the work that I've done with RED, which is the largest private sector donor to the Global Fund, which fights HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria, was to Swaziland, and it's still work that I support. Again, prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV is important and a big part of maternal deaths as well. So in my travels around the world, again, I'm trying to highlight the programs and the individuals who are making a difference and bringing the numbers of maternal mortality down. I was here 2.5 years ago to film for 2 weeks for No Woman, No Cry. And since that time, the numbers of maternal mortality rates have been reduced greatly. And to come back and to see that kind of change is possible and is happening is very inspiring and hopeful, because when you're talking about an issue where hundreds of thousands of women die every year around the world, but 90% of those deaths are preventable. And what interests me, and where I think we all can really make a huge difference, is the fact that so many of them are preventable. So there is no real reason why women are dying. We'll
have to finish with a couple of the questions very shortly. As you're a model and best known model in America, do you have any message for the models in Bangladesh shortly?
My advice generally to models or young people who would like to be models is to stay in school. I've returned to school after my career, but I think it's important because it's a career that's usually very young and youthful. But there's nothing in my career that couldn't have waited until I finished school. So I usually encourage girls that it's more important to stay in school than it is to pursue a career as a child.
What is the terrific information or facts or case you have found in Bangladesh when working about maternity health system or maternity health situation?
Well, I think that the change in the maternal mortality rates here, that the research which was presented by ICDDRB recently, is that there was a 40% decrease, and much of that has become has been indicated by the fact that more girls and women are having access or knowledge about human rights and their right to health, access to more skilled birth attendants. That's changing the ratio of women who are delivering at home, and that's something that needs to continue to scale up. So again, the fact that so many deaths are preventable, and that prevention is something we should all focus on. Adolescent girls, delaying marriage, delaying first child, keeping girls in school, those are all critical things that we can do to prevent these senseless deaths.
Do you have any message for the global audience and the audience of Boishakhi Television for now?
Generally, I mean, not specifically. I'm here really very much focused on this work and this issue, and it's something that I'm very committed to for the long term. I hope that my film will be available on television here at some point, but Discovery Asia will be running it at some point. And when that happens, I think that it will be very informative, and it's the kind of program that I think will also educate about what happens in other parts of the world. And I think that we can learn a lot from one another as countries in this global society.
Christy Turlington, thanks indeed for joining, and also thank you very much for sharing your auspicious moment with Boishakhi TV.
Thank you.
প্রিয় দর্শক, আপনারা শুনছিলেন ক্রিস্টি টার্লিং, আমেরিকার জনপ্রিয় মডেল ইনভেস্টর, ইয়োগা প্র্যাকটিশনার, ইয়োগা রাইটার এবং ম্যাটারনিটি হেলথ অ্যাডভোকেট ও কেয়ারের অ্যাম্বাসেডর। তার কথা, ক্রিস্টি যেমনটা বলছিলেন, বাংলাদেশে এখনও মাতৃস্বাস্থ্য বিষয়ে তেমনটা সচেতনতা সৃষ্টি হয়নি যা গর্ভবতী মায়েদের জন্য প্রয়োজন, নেই তেমন কোনো চিকিৎসা ব্যবস্থাও। তিনি বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করেছেন সুস্থ সবল জাতি গঠনের জন্য নিরাপদ মাতৃত্ব অপরিহার্য। আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য, অনুষ্ঠান দেখার জন্য আপনাদের প্রত্যেককে অনেক ধন্যবাদ। আপনারা সবাই ভালো থাকবেন আর বৈশাখীর সঙ্গেই থাকবেন।